You and me. But yeah, we're excited. But I mean, we're already like doing stuff, so check it out.
When you said at farmers market,
Yeah, we're always there Thursdays.
which one?
Penn Street. It's 10 to 2. Here.
What's the minimum butter?
Oh, I didn't know that. It just,
I know Hershey got in trouble many, many years ago. Their ice cream had the lowest butter fat in the state, and they got caught. And they closed them down for a short time. But, you know,
Yeah, Ken and I are gonna,
Yeah, I think they're
I mean, you have a code for the actual, like,
you know, Ken and I are gonna have to play around tomorrow.
This is so weird. The city one isn't working, so like my email, the race things are coming up on it, but the city, I think that
you
I'm
could probably connect to, hi Nate.
Thank
To,
you.
Jeff will be here. in a couple of minutes.
Thank you. No bourbon with this?
oh, you like the water?
What do you, at least you have yours?
I brought mine, thank you.
How come you-
It's really hot enough for it. It's really
What?
hot.
It is.
Thank you. Jeff will be here in 5 minutes.
He told me 4.
I do need it. So when we are speaking, is that our camera?
Yes.
Okay. And then we'll be able to see everybody on screen there when we start.
What happened there?
Thank you.
Yep.
This is so weird. City website.
Let me see. Are you trying your phone?
Then we go read.
Why did it do that?
Is everybody gonna be here?
The only person we're waiting for is Jeff.
Not the weather.
She's on remotely.
How weird is that? Why would one page not pull up?
I don't know. Last
That's big.
Wednesday night, sometime after midnight, the email server shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't have email until Friday.
I had that too, my excuse list for my
Got these, what you call
It was real.
$10,000 in
Although I noticed, Shelley, you are now sending me things. All the email addresses that you have.
You have to replace them every 2 weeks.
That's how my mother-in-law-
Today. Now they're
Yeah, that's how my mother-in-law's wife.
It's lit up.
You gotta go to the doctor once every 3 weeks. Check them and clean them and everything else.
Yeah,
That's in the contract.
Yeah, she doesn't have to do that. She couldn't, she's a Country Meadows.
She what?
She's a Country Meadows, so that would.
Oh, well,
How do you find Country Meadows? For her?
Good, real happy.
Has she been there a long term or?
June of 2018. So I've been pretty happy, 1 or 2 little glitches, but generally happy. And my late uncle was here just briefly before he passed when they were
Do any of you women know where C building over at Brennan Hospital is?
Yes, that's where the clock tower is.
At the main entrance.
Yes, I don't think it's considered the main entrance anymore,
You
but
go in there and it's an operator here on the right. It used to be.
yes,
That's C, I thought so.
it's C building. But if they say main entrance, they mean Fifth Avenue.
Well, no, they told me the clock entrance.
The clock tower, yep, that's C building.
I remember many years ago, right across from there is where the nurses were housed.
Mhm.
And they would call us 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And the detectives were, and they asked us to go to the Crystal Palace and get hot dogs and hamburgers for them.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello, 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 look at this.
Oh, that was added duty.
Sorry, I'm late. Wow, thank you.
It's okay.
So,
So this is
working out
it.
fine
This,
for a while.
thought it was cool in here.
This is cool.
Is it cool?
Yes.
You just
Sorry.
walked up the steps, so.
No, actually I did. Took the elevator. I was like,
Oh.
forget that. How are you?
We're good.
Can you all hear the chatter that's going on in the room?
Uh-oh.
Loud and clear for the most part.
Yeah, the banter.
Right.
Yeah, I still can't get on the city website, so I have you been able to?
On my phone, yes,
I should have brought my phone.
but yeah, I printed it out, so.
Okay, we ready to go? We have everybody present?
Let's go.
All right, we'll start off with the charter amendment requiring council to employ its own solicitor. I nominate Strack.
I nominate Lindsay Opapuftik.
He's getting to it, you're good. All right, so I think we have Mike with us this evening, right?
Yes.
So I believe Linda forwarded a couple questions I had. So there's a couple, and I don't have all the charter. Mike, there was a charter board ruling, you may or may not be familiar with that. I had forwarded the response to everybody back in February, March, stating I completely disagreed that there would be 2 chief advisors of the city. I think those were one of, that was the question of imposing to council, how did you interpret the referendum? How did you interpret the charter? And then, what do you feel about the charter board ruling, if you will? Once we get through that question, Mike, then the dynamics of the what and the how and the when and all that could be played out. So a couple members of the body wanted to have an interim solicitor to help us step through this process. So I don't even have the 2 or 3 questions that I originally sent to Linda, but we don't have to start there. We'll get some comments from Mike and then we'll open up to council. And I've asked council to put together the questions that they felt were most pertinent, and we can start compiling them. And we don't have to answer them all tonight, but give you some expectations of what we're expecting to get out of this. Mike, this charter thing, that was 2 years ago that referendum was passed. Is that right?
No, it's about a year and a half.
About a year and a half. Okay, 2 years, yeah. But anyway, this coming up in 2022, we gotta have, things in place from a budgetary standpoint, concept standpoint, et cetera, et cetera. So our goal is to really kind of decipher this thing and get it mapped out as we're heading into the budget season, so we can do that this year. So you're talking late September, late summer, early fall. When we start that process, we've got to be prepared to start speaking to it. So I'll turn it over to you, Mike, and then we'll open it up to council members from there.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for inviting me here tonight, for this opportunity. I think you kind of answered my initial question, and that was going to be, what role do you see me as playing being here tonight? So I wasn't sure if you were looking at me as far as just to provide some interim guidance on what this role of the city council solicitor is supposed to look like moving forward, or if you were asking me for my resume, basically, if I was interested in applying for the position.
Yeah, so we're not there yet, Mike. I mean, we need you to help us navigate a lot of the questions that we have. But you're certainly welcome to apply when that time comes. If there is, if it's at an individual level, if it's at a firm level, et cetera, et cetera. The how, yeah, really, hasn't been defined because we really haven't scoped out the what. And that's why it's important that we get everyone's questions. We're gonna need your legal acumen to maybe navigate, do some research and come back to us with your general opinion.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah,
on the matters.
sure, that's fair enough, and I appreciate the clarity on that issue. I mean, I agree with you 100%. This is not a clear, easy thing that can be answered. I was not aware of a charter board complaint or challenge that you were referencing there, so I'll have to look into that. I was not aware of that. I just knew that this came up as far as the referendum goes on the May election, and now you're faced with the approval that was issued by the voters.
So we'll put that down as first on your list. I'll forward that ruling to you with my comments, and then maybe in a week or two, you can give us your thoughts on both the ruling and my thoughts and anyone else's thoughts at that point. But that would be a good starting point, Mike. So that's the top of the pyramid, if you will, council. You know, what is this city council solicitor's role going to be based on, you know, the whole legal acumen? Under that, and we're going to ask Mike to look at that, and then we'll have to come to a consensus where to go.
Well, your biggest concern is the chain of command situation.
Well, no, if you, again, I'm gonna refer everybody back to my email and the charter board ruling. You have to go back and look at that. Right now, the city solicitor is the chief legal advisor of the city, right? I believe based on their ruling, Mike, they were averring that there would be 2 chief legal advisors for the city of Reading, which opens up a whole other door of problems and complications, et cetera. So I'm hoping everybody's read that opinion. If they haven't, between now and the next time we meet with Mike, everyone's got to read that, and I would suggest you read my comments too if you don't have to. But that's an important element of this. I mean, because we have to start there. Now, there are some important sub questions, but I think a lot of them, Mike, are going to be contingent on, you know, our position on the first question. But I'll turn over to Sukhan.
Yeah, so Jeff, you know, my opinion on the referendum is that it is a chief advisor to council, to the council body, and not 2
Right.
chief advisors to the city.
Right.
And that distinction, I think, needs to be made with a legal opinion, Mike. So that would definitely be, I think, where Jeff's going from, because we have different interpretations. And certainly the vagueness, you know, doesn't help or
Well, there
works
has,
to our advantage, right?
Yeah.
In that circumstance.
Yeah,
and
and
there has to be consensus amongst us that we believe that. So your position will be important. Go ahead, Mike, I'm sorry.
yeah, I agree. Like I said, I'll have to look at that charter ruling, but, you know, I'll be honest, when I was preparing for tonight, I, you know, read through some of the pertinent provisions of the charter, and, you know, based on that, it was my opinion that this referendum did not change anything with respect to the city solicitor being the chief legal advisor to the city. I was interpreting the referendum to state that the city council solicitor would be exclusive to city council for mainly any legislative type of issues that would arise through city council, any type of clear conflict issues between city council and the administration, and then also to, yes, you could say, assist the city solicitor, you know, in any other legal matters involving the administration or the city as a whole, as city council would direct. So, I mean, that's very broad, and it's not clear, you know, when and where, but it seemed to me, at least, it was specifically in the discretion of city council when and where they would want this city council solicitor to be involved.
Okay, so that's a good point, Mike, and before you go, Lucine, so that, and I think I read the charter board's ruling correctly. I don't, Linda, it was a couple, back in February, I was in a haze, if you will, but we'll make sure you get that. But if your position is that way too, that'll allow us to get over to the deeper questions quicker. But we'll feed you that ruling But back to Lucina, then we might as well start laying out what the other big questions will be.
Right, so big questions. Next question for me is really, Mike, gonna be advice on framework, so, what do then, how do we bring this individual in? And what, models are out there? Linda has done a good job of looking at Bethlehem and providing us with how they incorporate city council solicitor. If there is, any research in addition to that that could be made to provide the case of, again, that framework. How can this work? What are existing models? That to me is a big second question.
So we'll just tally the questions for now and then give you a chance, Mike, to. So additional big questions. More, Lucy? Done.
I do, based on what this opinion says. And this opinion says that the city solicitor is no longer a legal advisor to city council, and that the city solicitor does not represent city council in any capacity. If we look at those things in the charter board's opinion, that's an opinion, it's not action. Where does this place us? I mean, if we can't go then to the city solicitor for a basic question.
Well, no, but see, that's question one that he's gonna answer for us. Because that's the ruling I was referring to.
And will we then be in violation?
Well, if that opinion
We
stood, no,
gotta get all this
I hear
cleared
you. If
up.
that opinion stood, it created more problems than it solved. So I think Mike's position was right, and we'll allow him to wade through that.
But I mean, that's,
Oh,
and
it's got all
that's
kinds of-
very
oh,
important
there's-
for Michael to opine on, because,
There isn't two City of Reading, so we need one chief legal advisor,
I
so.
mean, it's just so unfortunate going back to when this whole charter was developed, that this was done from day one.
Yeah.
Because with this whole referendum and opinions, it's just going, I think it's gonna be problematic either way, because who reports to whom?
Right.
Who, is there confidentiality then in terms of us dealing with our own solicitor versus how much that we'll share with the city? It's, I think, good luck, Michael. I think this is.
Well, but
Really
do you
burning.
have specific questions for Michael though, from a research, because that's question one, Lucine's posed question two. Do you have another question around
I guess-
structure?
In structure, are we looking, and is this part of this discussion or something else in terms of payment? Will this be a retainer position? Will this be an hourly position? How are we looking at dealing with that going forward? And what are the recommendations here?
All right, so that's kind of question two extended. Any additional questions from Mike to be able to take with
That's what I
him?
was gonna bring up, payment.
Okay, Melissa, Johanny, any specific questions?
Council President Jamar here. I don't have a question, but just that I sent budget draft worksheets out today to your office. So just we want to include a number in budget either way council decides to go.
Okay, now go ahead, Strat.
Like I said, I'm not trying to throw a curve at you, Mike, but have you gone over everything we've provided, and have you seen anything that you disagree with?
Well, like I said, unfortunately, I have not seen the city charter complaint and ruling that President Waldman was talking about. So I'll have to look at that. I mean, all I've seen so far is the referendum and the paperwork that Linda provided from the city of Bethlehem. And again, I feel like that is a good starting point,
Yeah.
moving forward to try to determine what exactly some of the duties are. But I'm not going to lie, as I was reading it, I was scratching my head several times thinking, are we just duplicating efforts here unnecessarily for certain things?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and this might fall into one or two, which we've already spoken of, but it's that duplication that we want to avoid. So if indeed we have I see as an opportunity to bring in an additional support individual who is highly qualified, maybe specifically in certain areas. that might be needing or lacking with our current law department to advise counsel on directly, I see this as an opportunity. So I certainly want to also remember that as we move forward, and the potential of what this can be as we navigate the process.
That's a good point.
So, before I open up for additional questions, you know, Mike, as in the past, we've used our own solicitors when there was conflicts, areas of conflicts, or to the point that Lucy we needed extended research in a kind of a specialized area, which might be overwhelming to, you know, to our solicitors department, even though they get into pretty much everything, but needed more of an added focus. So I perceived it that way as well, and then nothing in most instances would preclude our solicitor from talking with the city solicitor, because at the end of the day, we're under one liability. You know, as a city, the city is one entity. So this is just our starting point, and we're hoping to meet with you over the coming weeks to build more around it.
Yeah, I would just add that, I mean, that's another layer of the confusion, because in my opinion, the city charter already allowed you to do that as you were doing it in the past. So, you know, does this referendum create some sort of distinction? And I guess you have to take the position that it does, but we just have to figure out what that distinction is now.
Well, what it does is, you know, we've gotten into controversies in the past, and I know Linda can speak to this a little more, you know, where we had to get through an RFP process. There were not this administration, but there was the perception of administrative handcuffs on our ability to do that. So this was a clear path A to Z. The city council has their solicitor on retainer or whatever, as they need them to use them. There's no additional roadblocks.
Yeah, and I'd say in addition, it's probably better transparency for the set amount in the budget for the use of the taxpayers' dollars towards any needs that in the past, you know, we would have to go through that process and have to justify that every single time.
Okay, additional, Johanny, any comments? I can't see if your hand's up.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I have my hand up.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Now you see the hand. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Johanny, sorry. Go ahead, Johanny. We could hear you and you disappeared.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I just still insist that maybe we also explore creating, and I don't know if that would be an ordinance or what have you, but I think that the city solicitor's position should be very similar to the auditor's position in terms of it being a neutral party that represents the city, right? So that when the situation occurs that the solicitor is put in some type of conflict of interest, that he or she is to advocate or do what's in the best interest of the city, and that he or she has to adhere to making sure that both mayor and the council body are being informed, are receiving the same information, that we're kind of on the same page. And if we disagree, that the solicitor is not forced to maybe only go by mayor's orders, because obviously mayor would be the one to terminate. Am I making sense what I'm saying? I don't know that two city solicitors is always, it may be the answer. I think there has to be a clause, a protective, I don't know if it's wording, a document, ordinance. I don't know what the terminology is, but it's almost that, you know, the city solicitor obviously is representing the city as a whole, which includes all of us. So he can't pick and choose who he's going to be, I guess, more loyal to, if that makes sense. It has to be equal treatment for both parties, accessibility to information, and that, you know, if the mayor asks him to do a certain thing, that we're kept in the loop and vice versa. Because I think the conflict in the past has been between, you know, maybe disagreements between former mayor and council body. And then the city solicitor is put in a predicament where they have to pick and choose who to obey, if you will.
Yeah, there's been situations like that, Johanny, and I don't perceive this changing the role of city solicitor. I would expect 90% of our legal guidance, even city council, coming from the city solicitor's office. There are those special needs situations or areas of conflict where we can have an immediate resource to say, okay, and even our solicitor and the solicitor can bang through that and say, all right, you know what, the middle ground is here. There could be a situation where things end up in court. That's very rare. But this is a resource for us. There can only be one city legal advisor. Now, I know the charter board, but for liability standpoints and other reasonings, and we'll give Mike a chance to dive into that. You know, there's going to be one voice of the city legal, or we'll have a disaster at the end of the day. But 90% of our stuff continues to come in conversation with the city solicitor's office. I don't think there's much dispute. When there is dispute, we typically resolve it. In this case, in the future, we will have a legal resource to say, well, hold on, let's get our advisor in here and get a deeper dive on this. And they may convince our solicitor to say, yeah, hey, that's right. Yeah, now that we look at this a little closer, you know, Mike's given us some new information. Yeah, we agree with that. So it's good, you know, nothing's perfect out of the gate. We need the starting point and then the formulation period, and then it'll work its way out from there. I'm sure there'll be a few hiccups along the way, so.
Sure that.
Additional questions that we can give for Mike, he's got a couple to ponder already just to start off, so when we regroup, these are the bigger questions to begin with, so.
Jeff,
Go ahead,
just a
John.
question, just to be clear about this, when we go forward to find a person for that position, we will clearly be doing an RFP, correct?
Well,
No, we did that in 2019, and we had a number of responses. The law office reviewed them and they approved 5 or 6, and that was the list I distributed a few times.
Can we do another one? Is there any reason not to, just an updated
well,
one?
before we get into the what, let's make sure we know, I mean, the how, let's make
Yeah,
sure
I
we
mean,
know what the
I'm
what,
just
yeah.
saying, as we look at all the qualifications,
Yeah, we
I
can,
just sort of think it might make sense, the same people could apply again, but
absolutely,
updated 2 years is 2 years, I think.
yeah, there's no.
How
I
does
think
it-
we'll get through that part of the process once Mike gets questions 1 and 2 kind of answered. And then we'll be able to kind of go down the world of development, if you will.
I just want to be transparent about that, you know.
All right, Mike, any final go ahead, Maria?
Thank you, Jeff. No, I just was gonna ask if the city auditor need any advice or anything that would be needed from the city auditor, would the outside counsel also advise to the city auditor as well?
I didn't hear the question, Maria, so I'm not sure if I understood it.
I believe she's asking if the council solicitor could also advise the auditor.
Well, that would be situational, Maria. I mean, I think we have to be careful with that.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah, how is the auditor represented? Would he or she
City
have to-
solicitor, I mean, she's part of the city just as we are.
Okay.
Well, what if there's a conflict there?
Well, then we'll cross that bridge when we get there, you know.
I hadn't even thought about that before, but that's.
Yeah, hopefully that won't happen, Maria. Try to stay out of any
Hopefully not.
controversial.
But thank you.
All right, Mike, any thoughts before we check out here?
No, I think I understand my marching orders, and I will get to work and get back to you guys as soon as possible.
Linda will make sure you get that charter board ruling.
Did it already.
And my comments, just send them or I'll have them.
No, I didn't send your comments. I
All right,
can't
I'll try
find
to
it.
send them to you separately, but
Okay.
thank you.
Sure. I do have one other question while you have me, and I
Sure.
think I know the answer, but I received an email yesterday about attending executive session tonight. Do you want me to attend that for any reason?
That was the message from Fred about the recycling litigation.
I do not think we need Mike for that. Do you?
No, I don't think so.
No, I think you're okay, Mike.
Fair enough.
We got Anna here. I mean, yeah. I don't think council has some separate position on that at this point. No, we're good.
Okay, that was the answer I was thinking, but I just wanted to confirm. You're in good hands with
All right,
Anna.
Mike. Thank you, sir. We'll talk with you soon.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye, Michael.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
I can't see you waving.
Right.
I'm just this little dot.
Yeah, Mike, Frank's for this. Frank, you sent us some information on the ARP. I don't have those printouts in front of me, and I didn't get a chance to look at them today. So I don't know if you're gonna be able to put them on the screen for us this evening, Frank, but you had some.
Yes, Council President, I provide some information. I do have a very brief PowerPoint. It won't take very long. They'll kind of capture everything that was sent in email and hopefully address any questions or concerns that council have. And then after the brief presentation, myself, Stan, and Jamar are also available for additional questions.
Okay.
Is that, okay, so what I'll do is, okay, great. So what I'll do is I will share my screen here. I should be able to know how to do this and be able to put the PowerPoint up. Let's see if this works. Share. Okay, does everybody see what I'm saying? The PowerPoint?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Yep. And thanks to Shelley, she showed me last week and I retained this knowledge. Okay, it's only, this PowerPoint's very brief, but it's to capture some of the questions in regards to what is the process of federal guidance controls and approvals and how it affects the city's process. So as I go to the second slide, just to give a real quick overview, to understand the transparency and public accountability part of this, we just need to just go over and have a agreement on what the funding objectives are and what the eligible expenditures are for the American Rescue Plan. And what you see here in the PowerPoint is just a brief statement. It's a philosophical commitment that the city administration, is fully committed to a transparent, accountable, impactful process in collaboration with council and input from our stakeholders and members of this community. So that's a standard, philosophy when we work on these type of things, but I wanted to just put that out there. So the next couple slides, one's about funding objectives, one's about eligible expenditures. We'll talk about the law that creates a transparency and public accountability aspect of the program, the key principles of the usage of the funds, and how it relates to the city's process. So I'm just going to jump right over to, let's see how we have this set up here, eligible expenditures. So, and I know we went over this stuff before, so I'm going over it very quickly. Just, it's sort of like a quick review, so we know what these monies are actually allowed to be used for. There's four main categories or bucket of funds that this money can be used for. The first one is really for the pandemic aid program. And that's stuff that goes directly to individuals and families in great need. So those types of funds usually go to other agencies such as public health agencies, housing agencies, nonprofits to address the things that might have been affected during the pandemic. The second is, and we only had a brief conversation about this, I believe in the past, about premium pay to public sector essential workers. It's a little bit more complicated. So what I do is I have a website that gets in a little bit more detail that the Congress put out to talk about what that means. And we'll look further into that to see if that's applicable to the city of Reading. And then the third and fourth items are the two items you hear most about is the revenue replacement due to losses of COVID-19. And then once all those other issues are met, if we take care of the revenue replacement and ensuring that other programming has been awarded that pandemic related, we can make necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So basically, this is the window that we're working with on how the funds could be used. In regards to funding objectives, basically, these are a couple statements here that this is the purpose of the money. I gave you an example of what the money is going to be used for, but here is the purpose of it. And it's to support COVID-19 response efforts, obviously to continue to decrease the spread and bring the pandemic under control. It's also to replace lost revenue for states, cities, and other organizations. And while we replace the lost revenue, it strengthens support for vital public services and help retain jobs. Everything is pretty much pandemic related. And then we talk about supporting immediate economic stabilization for households and businesses and addressing systemic public health and economic challenges. So this really isn't infrastructure money, but there's infrastructure related items that we could be involved in, but it's really to help meet the individual and community that are most in need. And most importantly, the last statement here is an important statement where it pretty much, this program provides substantial flexibility to meet local needs, and that's how the guidelines are set up. However, there is a strong adherence to rules and guidance. So while there is flexibility, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on how we meet local needs, because this money is really crafted to be used to meet local needs and to reach out to those who need it the most, there is flexibility, but there is a strong adherence to rules and guidance. So there is a lot of checks and balances, which I'll go over in a minute. And almost finished here. Transparency and public accountability. This is the question that comes up the most is with this large type amount of money in a short period of time, how do we have this process transparent and accountable? 3 types of reporting requirements. There's a series of reports. There's a report due this August already, an interim report. We'll be doing quarterly reports, a project expenditure reports, and then there's a yearly recovery plan performance report. All these reports are available to the public. They'll be on our website. It'll be on the city's website. It'll be on the federal government's website. Reports will be available to the public and then the public's allowed to review and comment. So there's record keeping and compliance is a critical part of this program. And there's a strong emphasis on performance reporting requirements, that this money is properly used and is accomplishing the goals that we said it would. And here, key principles for use of funds. And like I say, these are things we've kind of already touched on, but these are the responsibilities of the city to make sure there's no fraud, waste, or abuse. Maintaining documentation compliance is a critical responsibility of the city, and that we ensure that we have equitable delivery of services to the underserved community. This money is for the underserved community, and it's our responsibility to make sure that those are the types of services that are being provided. And basically, we're going to manage these programs using the guidance of the federal government. They're giving us guidance on how this works. When we look at the last slide here, and this is just a reinforcement that we have processes in place when it comes to procurement regulations. Nothing $35,000 or higher, as you know, has to be approved through council through the legislative process. So either a purchase or a contract, anything $35,000 or over will be required to be approved by council. And this process we have to follow the purchasing policies and procedural manuals. So that is the document, and those are the procedures that we use in order to allocate and award these funds. And obviously, we have a finance department that already has internal controls. They're audited, and we use general accounting practices. So the one last thing that we're still looking into, and we can maybe speak a little bit more to this in our question and answer part, is we are looking at utilizing specialized consultants to assist with us on ongoing compliance, performance, monitoring, and any analytics that's developed. We certainly have people on staff such as Jamar and Stan and others who are very skilled to be able to help manage this program, but this is a very large program and more hands on deck. And so the consultants would just complement and assist us in this process. So that's just a really brief overview, but this is the information that's coming from the handbook, from the guidelines that Treasury have issued, and it's pretty much just an outline or Cliff Notes version that captures the essence and the spirit of what needs to be done. So I didn't want to get into too much detail in a sense without maybe addressing some questions.
Yeah, Frank,
Go ahead, sir.
I need to jump in right away because go up to the early slides, the application of these dollars. Go way up.
Sure.
Before, yeah, go. Wait, not there. The next. Yeah. So I'm trying to. You were on the right. Go to number 3.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Support. Immediate.
One more up. Well, no. Go up one more slide.
Oh, one more slide. I'm sorry. I got the overview. Here,
Next slide.
Okay, well, I'll start from the beginning here. You just tell me.
Keep going, right? One more, right there.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Go up to eligible expenditures, Frank.
Okay.
Back one.
Right
There you
there.
go.
So
Okay.
as I'm looking at this, to me, this evening, this thing is taking on a whole new flavor. I mean, we look like a PPP clearinghouse. Because I see at the very end there, necessary investments, water, sewer, broadband, but that seems rather limited from an infrastructure standpoint from the city. Now, I'm gonna go back and read these guidelines again, but some fiscal relief for revenue replacement, but that, we're looking at $3 or $4 million there. maybe 5, I don't know the number, but
So,
premium pay to public sector, let me finish, guys. Premium pay to public sector essential workers and grants to private sector essential workers, that was handled on, at least the private sector was handled on other programs. And
That has limits too.
yeah, and the pandemic aid programming for public health, economic sector recovery, housing, and nonprofits, some of them were covered under other programs as well.
However, that number 1 does apply to preventative measures for future pandemics.
Right, well, understandable. So, but a lot of it, I'm just trying to figure out, of the 62, 61, 63 million, how much we're gonna be able to attribute directly to city infrastructure programs, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like they've turned us more into a conduit for all those other entities, and that's a lot of added work. Certainly, we want to make sure those people get it done, but I can see the need for an outside consultant, but I'm not clear tonight on the real use of these funds. I am clear, but my opinion is different from where I was just yesterday. So I'm gonna have to dive deeper into these. And then you guys are working on a preliminary plan based on these guidelines?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, if I could have just a brief second, Council President.
Sure.
So yeah, there's 2 ways that we're going to be able to best benefit the taxpayers. One is through revenue replacement, and that would push back a little on the figures that you put out there. We'll have firm numbers from Gordon at the end of the week. We just had a call at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and it's going to be much higher than what you alluded to. Second, there are ways that we can categorize, for example, the fire station at 9th and Marion. That is in a census tract that qualifies as a distressed community that is being served with a brand new fire station. So that would be in response, would be allowable to be categorized in response to the pandemic. And there are a lot of other ways that we can be creative. Part of what I said in the initial session we had on this is that we want to run the budget for spending these funds similar to how we do our traditional budget. Also on the call today were Gordon and Chris Turtell, our external auditor, and they both agreed that that would be a best approach, 1, to engage the public, 2, to maintain as much transparency as possible, and 3, to run an effective process that is going to provide the documentation that will need to go into the reporting that we will send quarterly to the federal government.
Right, so we'll, before you go, Lucy, we'll wait for your initial kind of outline on how you think these dollars could be best accessed by the city and go from there as a building point. But boy, if we have to get into a lot of, subletting of dollars out to a number of agencies, we're just gonna be turning into an arm of the federal government. I want to be careful, not that we don't want to do it, but every dollar of this money has to get approved by city council.
Absolutely,
And-
absolutely.
In some
absolutely.
form or fashion, that $35,000
Yeah.
threshold, we want to be careful with this money because it's got too many tentacles, and we'll have a chance to talk about that. I understand, Jamar, there's going to be more defined guidelines that we receive in September.
Correct.
Yes, that is correct as well.
Okay, so.
But make no mistake, we are a conduit from the federal government to use these funds to help with the economic support, which is on, I think, the next slide that Frank had alluded to.
Good, we're entitlement community. And one of the concerns too is on how the money is distributed. These are very impactful programs. You're not going to see small little grant amounts. We're talking about like whatever projects are decided. So we're looking at hundreds of $1,000s maybe for a project, at least 50. So any type of money that eventually is decided by everybody on how to move forward, they're going to be above the $35,000 threshold. There's not going to be like little $5,000 grants or anything like it. These are meant to be monies and programs to get out there immediately to provide the necessary relief. One of the things I ran across, and maybe it's just me, there's a lot of talk about the infrastructure bill going on at the same time. And sometimes when we're listening to conversations and we're hearing about the proposed infrastructure, and then we're hearing about the already approved American Rescue Plan. So this isn't an infrastructure bill, and sometimes it's easy to think it is because there is infrastructure involved, but there is a separate bill. So when I was doing my research and there's a lot of cross messaging, I had to make sure I was, really clear about this is the American Rescue Plan and then the infrastructure bill. Sometimes the conversation blends together and people view this as strictly a infrastructure bill when this particular bill is not. It's funding.
So a question for the administration, how do you plan to engage the public on moving through this process once you have a process in place?
I know Jamar, I think he shared it with our group. I don't know if you guys were copying on it. Community input is critical, is a critical ingredient. So some cities have done surveys and they started that process. So we're looking at a combination of providing surveys out to the community through traditional, non-traditional venues, and there will be a public hearing before any plan is finalized or presented to council for final approval. It's very similar, as Jamar said, to the community development process. When we talk about an action plan that's done every year, that's exactly what's going to happen here. We have to develop an action plan that requires a public hearing, community input, and we plan to take it many different venues. So we're still finalizing that, but that's the approach that we're taking.
I would also
One
add,
thing, if I may add this, looking at the broadband infrastructure parcel, Council President, is you can see what just happened to our system, even though it was a situation more so to the software provider than our limits, but with the broadband, we're going to be able to expand the capacity to, as a distressed city, to other people and working with other groups as well. For example, Berks County and/or Reading School District developing partnership. This is what the guidelines are stressing, to make sure that everybody works together as a team to enhance what has been going on. And Jamar is absolutely right. We are a conduit, and we just have to put our best foot forward to make sure what is done correctly and precisely.
So it's a coordinated community initiative, and that's it sums up exactly what it stands as. It's a coordinated community initiative. That's how we detail it. Go ahead, Jamar.
So Councilor Sahelnik, it would also be most helpful. I did share this internally, but the community meetings that members of council hold in their district, it will be most helpful to bring input back from those meetings and/or include the administration, as was done previously under the previous administration when I was here. We were invited out to some of those community meetings, and we can get that feedback and include it in the process. And again, once we get to the budget and we go through all of the hearings and we go line by line, all of it will get thoroughly vetted out, as is our normal course of business. And then the last thing on broadband, that's going to cost millions of dollars to lay broadband. I also advised our IT manager that when we do the RFP for that, we need to include a component of public access. So it won't just be broadband for city facilities and infrastructure, but it would be a component to create more public access to broadband specifically.
Absolutely, with a 5G and the like, absolutely, Jamar. There's a lot of points to that, and then there's a lot of points to the vulnerabilities. I know the monies that I put in just for water and sewer could probably get to $60-70 million itself, and that's not what you have to do. You have to do this correctly, precisely. And Council President, you're correct. This isn't going to be in $500, $1,000, and $20,000 increments. And sometimes you may see people become a hair too myopic. You're going to have to go into the grander scales, and there's where council is going to have to come about and think strategically and how we all work together as a team for the vitalization of the city of Reading. Jamar, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important that all the council gets intimately familiar with the guidelines.
Absolutely.
Well, there is, if I may also.
But before you go, Sarah, because my perception was that we have 2 or 3, entities in the community that we'd have to support with some of this funding. And I don't want to see us have 50, but maybe we have 4 or 5 and just a couple of the umbrella organizations who do a lot of the oversight of the smaller ones.
Correct, Council President. I've attended a few of the council mayors initiatives and listening to some of the large cities and their mayors discussing this. And this is ever evolving. This is the first time I've really seen almost, I don't want to use the term final draft, but we are getting closer to a final draft of what Treasury is actually allowing us. PFM sent a very nice, concise 6-page document. And there it's still subject to change because it's still a draft. This is an evolving situation. And when we bring on a third party to ensure we are doing everything correctly, following the guidelines and follow the matrices that are being presented, this is going to be fantastic for the city of Reading. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for us.
Can we get that 6-page report from PFM? Go ahead, Lucy.
That was with the email that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was today.
That was
Okay, I
sent
didn't get it.
earlier.
Okay,
So in addition to PFM, which we'll get, I'm sure, or we can look into, and obviously the federal guidelines, what is the administration using internally as a baseline? Because it seems that everything has been so ambiguous that I would hope that you were turning inward to a plan that we already have in place in terms of the city. So is that the Downtown Plus strategic plan? Is that pieces of building into a comprehensive plan? What are we using internally as our baseline of measure to match with PFM's guidance, the federal guidelines, et cetera?
In your packet that we sent, we're working on a scoring rubric, a scoring sheet that just scores on if it meets our master plan, how it affects the effectiveness of it. So it's only a draft, but in the packet that was sent this morning, there is a scoring document that we're looking at to help guide some of this, the projects and priorities. But I know Jamar was actually part of it, so Jamar may want to add more to that or clarity.
Oh, no,
Yeah, so I think you guys are at a good point. It sounds like Stan's been out there with the other municipalities trying to figure out what they're thinking. You guys are putting together kind of a draft of ideas, and you have a scoring process kind of in process as well. So that by the time it gets to council, you'll have thought this thing through. Go ahead.
Yes, it'll be well thought through. 1, 2, keep in mind, I think Councilor Sahelnik, you just mentioned the Downtown Plus. So this gives us the money to implement that Downtown Plus. This gives us the infusion of cash, Council President, as Jamal is mentioning in the comments, to do facade improvements to address blight. We just have to get creative and make sure we're using the right language insofar as it is responding to the pandemic and the disparity that's been created by it. And also don't forget that in terms of being a conduit, the successful program that council approved last year with Community First Fund, we could do that on steroids, for lack of a better term, and use, let's say, $5 million or something for small business revitalization. So, there's many options. There are many ways to be creative. Yay, we just zoomed in. And uplift the community as well.
If I may, Council President.
Yeah.
This is Nate here. So we're excited about the Downtown Plus study we stand and stuff. And the mayor's committed to downtown. But at the same time, the mayor is committed to the whole, to the city as a whole. So yes, we can put some resources towards the Downtown Plus project, but the mayor is committed to spreading the love into every district within the city. And when it comes to getting people involved in the residents of the city of Reading, the mayor has tasked me to look into it to see how we can bring them in. And he suggested for me to start conversations. This was last Thursday, me and him had a meeting. And he suggested for me to start reaching out to the council men and women to see with dates that are available for next month. So we could go around the city and listen to the people's concern, because we want to address the concerns of the residents, but at the same time, look ahead to what can we avoid in the future when something catastrophe like a pandemic happens.
Yeah, that's great. I think public input is absolutely critical. Because everything we do, including downtown, is for the general public as well. So that's a good date. I think all council members would be willing to do the deeper dive. I do like where you guys are going. You're learning more about all these moving parts. You're trying to put some structure around it. You're getting creative. That third slide kind of scared me, but now that we're doing the deeper discussion, I see there's some way we'll be able to get creative and handle this effectively. So I think we'll wait for your continued progression. And I do have another comment, but I'll go to Donna first.
Going back to your concerns about council automatic approval of all expended funds, do we need any legislation to support that?
No.
We're, because we see the 35,000.
Yeah, let me clarify that. So, and I've had this discussion with Abe. He said it to us publicly in the meeting. There will be no expending of funds without council
We
approval.
want to make sure.
We're waiting for
Word
the
of mouth is good, but
let me finish. We're waiting for the September provisions that Jamal and I just talked about. The only reason, just like CDBG dollars, everyone gets approved by city council. We want to make sure that everyone is protected so that there's no miscues. This is not aimed at the administration. This is aimed at everybody. So we're making sure that the city of Reading doesn't end up on some map because of ARP funds. I don't foresee that happening. I don't think council foresees that happening. We will wait for the September guidelines to come through again. As Jamar mentioned, these will be handled just like CDBG funds that are very well scrutinized. There's a process in place. We approve the funding, we approve the amendments to that funding. All those dollars are well controlled. And I wouldn't expect this to be any differently. At that point, if we feel that there's gaps, then we'll measure it then.
Donna's question, I've also posed to the solicitor to provide us an opinion on, do we need to create legislation to protect ourselves as a city in addition to the federal guidelines?
Even if there's a redundancy.
We'll wait to hear from him as well.
Yeah, so, but we don't do that every year when we get the CDBG funds. We don't.
This is
we don't-
different.
well,
This is different.
Well, we're gonna get, so once we get those guidelines, we may find they're not different. And I'll go to Stan for a second. You've been in other municipalities. Have you heard of new ordinances being created to control these funds at this point? What have you been hearing?
No, sir, I have not. One thing I do know is that there has been ongoing conversation. So no matter what is proposed, it's been group buy-in. For example, the city of Easton has made decisions rather quickly on what they needed. And they all came together fairly quickly and got it done. No, but I have not heard of specific legislation being created to confirm the spending of the monies. However, the city of Reading has tremendously strict guidelines in place now. And I like the fact that council will have oversight. You know, $35,000 is that threshold, but if it's even lower to 25,000, you're going to see every expenditure coming out regardless. No money's going to be spent unless there's a group consensus.
Jeff Stratton.
So if I could,
Stratton and Jamar, go ahead, Stratton.
Going back to Donna's comments, I think we need to be very careful here. Some people on the board here will remember the problem we had with the money that was passed on by the city and we never got back. Okay, we need to have something in whatever we pass that's gonna make it possible for us to get our money. I know when I came on, I went after 4 different people. And the one guy left here, even with a pension and some big amount of money. And you know what they told me? The statute of limitations ran out. He did not have to return the money. We need to be careful when we start lending money out or giving people, trying to take care of people, and then they end up putting it to us. But I think we need to be careful, and we should have something in writing. If you don't, you're in trouble.
All right, guys, so I'm gonna go back to where we're at on this issue. Then we'll turn over to Jamal. We're waiting for the federal government guidelines on this funding and how it's supposed to be regulated and controlled. If it's exactly like CDBG, we will already have all those controls in place. We expect it to be pretty similar. And Jamar, did you have a comment?
I was just going to read, from the guidelines that Gordon distilled for you. Allowable costs are based on the premise that a recipient is responsible for the effective administration of federal awards, application of sound management practices, and administration of federal funds in a manner consistent with the program objectives and terms and conditions of the award. Recipients must implement robust internal controls and effective monitoring to ensure compliance with the cost principles, which are important for building trust and accountability. Yes, we need internal controls. Yes, we need transparency, accountability, all of that, but I'm not clear on where additional legislation is going to help with that. One, but that is totally your will and your authority to do. But secondly, the references to walking around money and handing out money, like we're not operating in the time from 20 years ago. I say that respectfully, but this is 2021 and nobody's just giving out money or anything like that. So I just really don't understand what that is about.
No, I don't even want to go there. I just want to make sure that, when you look at our CDBG process, so everything that you just read, that the people who applied, they've gone through a program application, they've been validated by CDBG staff, they've been forwarded to city council for approval, and they get approved. That's all.
So all that same documentation
I don't
we
think
have to do for
walking
this.
around money, but there are organizations that can represent themselves of having all those capacities and,
But Council
not that that's
President,
gonna happen, but it could happen tomorrow. So we just want to make sure the checks and balances are in place
Absolutely.
for this money,
Right.
because we don't, and I agree with you, nobody's believing this is 20 years ago.
Jamal, let
right,
me
but even
say-
if we did a sub-recipient, they have to register with the federal government through SAM
Right.
and follow all the guidelines just like we do. So there's no scenario where some organization that's not a real and legitimate organization or organization that's willing to register with the federal government would receive any money, let alone money that council members or council body has not approved to be sent out.
I'm in full agreement with you. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So go ahead, Strat.
No comment.
You had a comment?
No, like I said, I know of cases where we're still waiting for money.
Those were some HUD loans that went back many years ago, Strat, that we've gone through a number of times. Maria, you had a comment?
Yes, I just would like to hear from the administration when they gonna have the budget together, because I think by having the budget together, how the money is gonna be spent, I think that we put us in a good situation and to keep, to keep internal control and follow the guidelines from the federal government and stuff like that. And I think that would be a great thing to have, because that will avoid probably a lot of questions and a lot of confusion that people might have.
Maria, did your office receive a budget draft sheet today with the
Yes, I
message
did.
included
Yes.
about all of that? Okay, thank you.
If I may,
Let's stand.
if I may,
I'm sorry, I just was asking if you had a deadline when the budget is gonna be completed for this funds. That was my question, basically.
Well, we have 18 months, if I'm right, Jamar.
The budget for spending funds for 2022 will be on October 1st when the administration submits it to council. Included in my message today, I asked for drafts to be back to me by, I believe, August 6th, so that I can have a budget to the mayor by the end of August. We can tweak it in September and it'll be ready for council, just like it always is on October 1st.
Thank you.
if I may, Council President, and Maria, you are included, I see, in our Zoom meetings with the third party.
Yes.
So that's a great thing. So there is a degree of transparency there that I'd like to share with council. Number one, you as an elected official see that as the overseer of our monies. That's great. Number two is the comment in terms of budget. The budget that the city creates in my Department of Public Works is not going to have any of these American Rescue Plan funds in it. That's going to be wholly separate.
A separate budget.
Yes.
And I also asked the question because probably the public doesn't know, how the administration is going to proceed, how this is going to, the process that is going to be taking place.
Agreed, Maria, and we've talked about this in council, people, that I know what I submitted early on in when we first understood what could and could not be accounted for. Public Works could spend the entire money in stormwater, sanitary stormwater, helping with our potable water and the Analani Dam alone, and then building 9th and Marion, as Jamar discussed, and then working on the police building as well. I could spend it in 5 projects and still have a shortfall of $30 million. So, but it's just council will be a part of everything.
So, yeah, I think you guys are going down the right path. I think we're gonna see a document somewhere in the near future that says, here's a menu of projects that we recommend based on what we think we can do, and even some outside outlays, and here's the process. Here'll be the controls. I'm not too worried about it. This thing's got a lot of moving parts to it, and it's a lot of money. So
Sure.
I think you guys are doing the right things. I have no problem with where we're at. Additional comments? I think everyone else feels that way. Controls are always a concern for everybody when, anytime there's money involved, eyebrows go up. And that's not to any way offer any, subjective views of the administration. It's just, people been, they want to be cautious. That's all. All right, anything else on this issue? I think, Linda, you gave me an update earlier about state and federal, county and state categories are pretty much identical, right?
They are identical.
So they have the same identical, which is another bigger discussion, guys. I mean, we can't necessarily get through it tonight, but I'd love to hear the administration's thoughts on capturing some of those additional funds as well, if they have even considered it, and B, if it's even feasible, and C, how will we do it? So just a thought. I want to make sure that we're at least keeping that scrolling around our mind. You're busy enough with the local funds, right? So I'll follow up with the mayor on that one, and we can certainly discuss that. Let's put that on the committee of the whole agenda 2 weeks out, Linda, so that we can discuss it with the administration. That'll be accessing of additional ARP funds at the county and state level. All right, guys.
Did we get the PowerPoint? Did we receive that?
We did.
Frank's PowerPoint?
We did get
Yeah,
that.
okay,
I didn't
okay.
get a chance to look at it. He emailed it out this morning.
Thanks, Frank.
He ambushed us. Okay, this morning. All right. Okay, so we're gonna go into agenda review. And I gotta switch glasses because I can't see. I can't even see with these. I should have brought my big micro. I got these Coke bottle things that.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. So we're gonna have no proclamations this evening. We got, where is it?
Nancy Leonard.
How did I even see? Oh, there it is. Yeah, Nancy Leonard, right?
Correct.
From Transformative Solutions Network. She's gonna do our invocation. We don't have any proclamations. How many public comment speakers do we have this
We
evening?
have 2 written.
2 written. Who's gonna read those?
They're both about the stadium.
I can read them if you want me to. It's
Yeah.
up to you.
So Donna will read those. There's nobody scheduled to speak live?
No.
No, okay.
Thanks.
Then we'll go into the approval of our agenda and minutes, including our consent agenda legislation. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items there. The first item is a resolution authorizing conditional offers of employment for the hiring of the following as probationary patrol officers effective July 5th. Zachary Dugan, Dean Ebersol, Paige Stewart, and Emily Schreiner. Any comments or questions on that? That seems to be pretty clear. Obviously, it's a little retroactive as well, but that's not uncommon. All right, if there's no comments on that, we'll go to the next resolution authorizing the purchase of Class 8 lifting equipment for the Public Works Fleet Division from Hydro Auto Parts in the amount of $54,300. Yeah. Anybody have any comments or questions on that? Sounds like a piece. Go ahead, Stan, did you want to give us a brief?
No, it's pretty simple, cut dry. It's things that we just need to do. It's part of the normal operations.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
No comments or questions on that? All right. The next resolution is authorizing the submission of the Pennsylvania DCED Commonwealth Financing Authority Multimodal Transportation Fund Program Grant Application for the City of Reading 18, I guess this is 18th Ward Bicycle.
Wonder.
18th Wonder.
In the
Sorry
18th
about
ward.
that. In the 18th Ward Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Trail Project Layer 2. Any comments or questions on that, Lucy?
No, I'm grateful to the administration for continuing along because we have phase 1 for the city and now eagerly applying for phase 2 or layer 2. And they've already started breaking ground and working on this, so.
Is that where you were at last week?
Yeah,
How much is that?
right in
grant
front of
for?
my house. I don't know, what, that's a good question.
It's right in front of your house.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was great.
yeah. How much is the grant for, Jamar or Stan?
Ooh, let me pull that one up. I need 30
4 million.
seconds.
1.4 million.
Correct. And with that being said, there's an awful lot of work and part of that. And I have to say, Cindy DeGroot and did an outstanding job working with Tim. Cindy DeGroot did an awesome job.
Okay, any other comments or questions on that? All right. If not, the next item is an award of contract authorizing the purchase of 6 patrol police vehicles and 1 K9 vehicle from New Holland Auto Group, a CoStarz vendor, at the cost of $348,765 from the Capital Improvement Fund. Any comments or questions? Obviously, we've already had this budgeted. Right? for this
Yeah,
cost.
this is the annual patrol car budget under CIP.
And what do they get, like 3 years out of them, right? They're driven pretty.
Yeah,
hard.
typically use of life is 3 to 4 years.
Are they in addition or replacing like the existing?
Typically replacing, right, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
typically
they were-
replace. Oh, the chief's here. Sorry, chief.
Yes, they'll replace frontline cars. Those cars that they're being replaced will get rotated into like the second line vehicles. So if we have extra officers out on details that need cars, we'll use them. And then those cars that were in those roles, some of them go to the academy for driver training and other ones just get taken out of service because they're that old or in that poor of condition.
All right, great. Any additional comments or questions for the chief? All right, thank you, chief. If not, we're going to move on to the award of contract authorizing the purchase of 1 police evidence vehicle from Whitmoyer Ford, a CoStarz vendor, at the cost of $46,750 from the Capital Improvement Fund. Any comments or questions on that? That's pretty self-explanatory. Chief, how often do we rotate that one out? Same deal?
Probably less.
We probably have had that current vehicle in service for over 10 years. I would just have to go back and look at when we obtained that, but it's been at least 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, you just need to think about how the patrol cars roll every day. every
Oh, I
hour.
know.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're gonna have the administrative report this evening. Is it gonna be Frank and Nate, both of you? Who's gonna be giving the report?
Council President, it'll be me, Frank.
All right. All right, then we'll have our auditor's report, and then we have a brief report from Hemington Urena?
Yeah.
From the Blighted Property Review Committee. All right,
Yeah, I was mistaken. There's one person that's speaking tonight and one written comment.
oh, all right, well, so Donna, you'll have to read, if they're online, you'll have to read the public comment guidelines. All right, ordinances for final passage. Boom, boom, boom. All right, this ordinance was scheduled, I don't know, we need to discuss this, amending ordinance 54, 2021, amending the city code by adding a new chapter 433 public art to establish a process for city to
Gonna
consider.
table this, Jeff.
Motion to table,
Yeah,
okay.
because we need a couple more, modifications to it.
We do, and administration has asked as well that we pull back on this for the moment. So let's keep working on it and let's coordinate it with Frank and Jamal if we can. I know you have up to now. I just
And
want
there's a few
We'll keep
other
both of
folks.
them then.
it's just, there's only one ordinance.
Yeah, just the ordinance on
The
public
next
art.
one,
Those are introductions.
Those are introductions.
okay,
All right, so we're gonna table that. Somebody will make the motion to table that. That'd be great. And then we'll go into introduction of new ordinances. The first one's amending Administrative Code Section 5-208, rules of procedure by defining a quorum and remote participation at meetings. Did we discuss this? Didn't we discuss this last week?
Yes.
Anybody have any comments on that now? We'll have a chance to discuss it again in
these
2
are
weeks.
just-
It's just trying to formalize
Hybrids and everything.
the guidelines. Go ahead.
Would that allow, if, for a remote, if I wanted to remotely, like dial in whenever, or just a certain amount of times a month?
Here's the way it's currently drafted. You can do it anytime for committee of the whole meetings, but only up to 4 times a year unless certain situations exist for regular meetings.
Okay.
And there'll be flexibility in it.
Yeah.
Especially if you order pizza for the committee of the whole meeting. You'll have a lot of good standing.
So I do believe that we as council should try to connect a little bit over the next couple of weeks to talk about some concerns, just as Melissa stated, just to vet this out, so that as we move it forward in a timely fashion.
Well, and it's subject to
Our
change. I
questions
mean,
are-
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we don't know what the fall's gonna bring or anything else, so it's kind of tentative. I wouldn't get too, if the goal is to meet in person outside of any, health and safety issues, so I don't think we want council members remoting in half the year, but times have changed, right?
Yeah.
All right, and then the next ordinance is amending the Administrative Code Section 5-209, public participation by providing citizens with the ability to continue to submit written public comment. I think everybody supports that, right?
Yeah.
Can I send in anonymous comments?
Try.
No.
And
All right, ordinance C, establishing a no parking zone in the 200 block of Chestnut Street to eliminate traffic concerns in the Redcom building. Is that coming to us from the Parking Authority?
Public Works.
Public Works? Okay, how many spaces is that taken out? It's not a very big parking area. I mean, there's nothing else there but the Redcom building, if I'm right.
Correct. There's a picture attached.
So how many spaces are we making in those parking zones? Do you know?
I don't know.
Is it like 3 or 4?
Yes,
Stick.
yes.
Is that for truck
Great.
deliveries and?
Yes.
Is that for truck?
Yeah, what's happening is they're having difficulties maneuvering in and out of their facility. That some of the tractor trailers, when they encounter some of the smaller cars sitting that are even some of the double parkers, and I hate to say that, they have difficulties getting in and out of their parking lot in the loading zone. This has been under conversations for the past few years, it seems, and we're fixing it now. Tim did a very good job on that.
All right, yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, it's the only thing there is Redcom building. Any other comments or questions on that? Well, again, we'll be voting on these in 2 weeks. And then there's 2 referendums that are going to be suggested or voted on to be put on the ballot. The first one, ordinance D, directing the County Board of Elections to place a referendum on the 2021 general election ballot to eliminate Charter Section 1110, recall of elected officials, as the state Supreme Court has determined that these local provisions are unconstitutional due to the impeachment process provided in the state constitution. So it's just a cleanup referendum.
Right.
The next ordinance will be another referendum directing the County Board of Elections to place a referendum on the 2021 general election ballot to amend Charter Section 1204 with the correct citation to state statute Title 53, Subchapter A, amendment of existing charter optional plan 9 through the County Board of Elections, and with a current citation to the existing home rule charter and requirements. Boy, I'm sure the voters are going to understand that one.
Is this what we got an email about
I hope not.
today?
No, I don't know. Then will you explain one again?
Yeah.
That section of the charter provides, it says that citizens can initiate the charter amendment process. The charter's initiative process, and that's incorrect. If a citizen wishes to amend the charter, they need to go through the County Board of Elections. And then C says the Charter Review Commission can also seek a charter amendment using that same charter initiative when they would have to go through the County Board of Elections.
So it's just adding clarity. We might want to word that a little better for the referendum. I just
agree.
just
Yeah.
because I don't,
Yeah, the ordinance is better worded than the.
okay, all right.
What about, did Marcia submit one regarding taking?
Yeah, Marcia submitted that,
qualifications?
and at the committee of the whole last week, Abe asked to have a discussion with her privately first.
We're just under a timeframe.
Correct, if we don't have it passed by the end of July, it's not going to make it on the general election ballot.
So I'm not sure why we couldn't just introduce it.
It is on holdover, isn't it?
No,
Yeah,
Oh,
it
it's
should,
not. Well,
it
then
should
it
be
needs to be introduced.
introduced.
There's no way it'll get through.
Abe's on vacation this week.
I'm aware.
Can anybody from the administration speak to whether that conversation occurred?
I thought that was in
I don't
the
know.
pending legislation.
No, it's not under pending
I
legislation.
really feel like we need to move that. We need to introduce that this week.
So we can add it here as an introduction.
Well, I don't know. There's that new state law that says you can only add de minimis items to the agenda.
So this is gonna create a problem.
Well, it might be one for next spring then. I mean, at worst comes to worst. I mean,
Well, I think the concept was because we're in a situation now where we have an acting person in that role, which I'm not sure
Well, what's today, the
we're even
12th?
adhering to the charter.
I
How
agree,
long
but,
that's
and I also agree with what's been proposed, but I want to know that the administration is in support of what's being proposed.
well, we don't know. He's not here.
So
But
without
I mean, there was
anybody
plenty of
comment
time.
on that.
There was
Fix that
plenty
on
of
the agenda.
time for everybody to discuss this. Pick up the phone and you do it.
Well, Joe, Marcia's been out of town and Abe's on vacation. Does anybody in the administration know if Abe and Marcia had a chance to discuss that ordinance relevant to the engineering requirements for the public works director?
That's why I said, let's table it till Marcia gets back. and
Well,
then-
it's not- it's not even on the agenda. We can't
It's not
even add it, so
it's
we're
not
gonna
even
have to
added.
just defer. When is Marcia coming back?
I think she's
3
back.
weeks.
Is it 3? I thought it was 2.
She said 3 was
She was
last
totally
time.
weeks.
agree.
We're gonna miss the
We're gonna miss this because today's already the 12th.
Yeah, there's no way it's gonna get on if you don't have it on now.
This is nuts.
Well,
What is the deadline for the county elections?
It's early August. I don't know the exact date.
Can you find out, let us know tomorrow?
Yeah.
Let them respond.
Yeah,
We're not gonna-
Frank, Nate, somebody,
Did
you
somebody
guys
respond to
hear
the
us? Can you
question?
respond?
Yes, no, I wrote, sent a message to the mayor and Abe, but I don't have any confirmation on what conversation took place between Councilwoman Marcia and Abe. I'm trying to, so there might have been a meeting. I don't know what the outcome of that was, so I don't want to speculate on how to move forward. So I don't know what transpired there.
Okay. My suggestion would be that next Monday, when we have committee of the whole, we have a special meeting to introduce this, so at least we might have to have a special meeting then to act on it to
But
meet the
that's a
deadline.
suggestion, and let Linda find out tomorrow what the absolute deadline
Okay,
is.
and I'll be willing to introduce it. If the two principals are not here to discuss this, I'll introduce it. Then people can yell at me later.
Well, we
Period,
can
end
always
story.
withdraw it if it needs to be, so.
Johanna has a comment.
It's
Go ahead,
frustrating.
Johanna.
Who requested who made that request? Was that the administration or was that council?
Marcia introduced it, Johanny, and the administration wants to hold off because they want to talk about it, but we don't, we should just be moving forward. If there's discussion that people aren't happy with it, then that can come up during the process. That's my.
No, I'm asking, because when Marcia mentioned it, that was the first time I heard of it. So I just want to understand process and when the discussion took place, who made the request, what's the background, what were the reasons? I just wanted to know the reasons,
Well, I
the
think-
justification,
Yeah.
and so on.
Marcia, I think, outlined that there has been consistently been issues and problems in attracting candidates because of the engineering requirement for the Director of Public Works. Certainly, there are engineers on staff, and the genesis or the background of this, the way it stands now, is that for years and years, the city always had, prior to this form of government, a city engineer. Hence, that was woven into the qualifications for the public works director. But when you look at public works directors, there really isn't an astonishing need for them to be an engineer because there are engineers within the department. So it's from a manager kind of scenario that easily could be fixed with that, perhaps we could attract more people without that engineering qualification being a part of it. So that's sort of the quick
Yeah,
background.
and it's been talked about for years and even
Yes.
recently. So I think it's a good idea for us to add it and have Abe and Marcia have a chance to discuss it. We'll get Linda to find out what the absolute deadline will be tomorrow. And if we need to, we'll introduce
Just
something.
have a special meeting next
Yeah,
Monday.
next week. So
for introduction.
so everybody's kind of got the
Yeah.
backs covered on
That's-
it.
That seems a good compromise.
All right. That's it for introduction of ordinances. And then we have just one resolution
But it's a big one.
making a $3 million commitment to the First Energy Stadium project contingent on the approval of funding from the county, state, and Fife and Phillips.
Yep.
I think this has been well discussed. You know, the city stadium, it is a city property. The Fife and Phillips has been long-term.
Did we say where the 10 million was coming from?
No, but we can get into that a little bit. There's a number of options, including possibly ARP money. It could be capital improvement money. It could be fund balance. There are a number of options. I think I think right now we just need to express our commitment, and then we can find the funding. I'm not too concerned about the funding streams. Jamar, did you want to speak to that?
200% agree with you, Council President.
Okay, yeah, we have enough flexibility.
Yeah, we have more than enough flexibility.
Yes.
Yeah. And, you know, the city, I think it has been well stated by everybody, they are a face of the city of Reading. And it's important not only for the fans, but for the players when they come here. They have top-notch facilities. I understand they eat their breakfast, lunch, and dinner
Yeah.
in the locker room.
Yeah, it's an outlaw one.
You know, these guys go on to be, some of these players go on to be ambassadors of baseball, and some of them become very wealthy businessmen and investors in communities throughout the country. You know, we certainly love to have more from professional baseball, but they have, you know, a lot of other things to tend to as well. And
I think it's coming.
yeah, a lot of cities are trying to get these teams into their cities, and Reading Phillies are in no way threatening. The Fighting Phillies are no way threatening. In fact, Craig Stein's committing up to $3 million of his own money, you know, to pour into the city.
There's some other monies that may be coming that aren't even listed on here.
There's discussion about a bill in Congress about helping out municipal stadiums. Minor league stadiums. A lot of that is built around operational losses. And I think there's teams around, a lot of that's aimed at teams who do not have major league affiliations. So we don't know. But in the meantime, we're committed to it. With this vote, it'll allow everybody else to put their foot in. Go ahead, Stratton.
No, like I said, I know there's additional funds other than what's mentioned here and the federal that is coming.
Good. And I think we should make a point, and I had it when I met with Scott, you know, we should continue to improve the stadium. It shouldn't be
Absolutely.
once every time, you know, we're up against the wall. It's an important face for the city. There's a lot we can do there. Somebody mentioned Erie. I said, I don't know who played Erie, but we had Mike Schmidt and Greg Lazinski and Brian Howard and Larry Boa and Ryan Sandberg and everybody else. Go ahead, Christine, I'm sorry.
So my question is that as we pass, if we pass this resolution for the commitment, is there a possibility, Jeff, just as you said, and the funding comes through, the team stays here, can we legally, actually, maybe more of a law question, set up some parameters in which with this funding, we, you know, encourage or ask that, you know, they're looking at creating or forming a task force for, you know, baseball town. They're looking at working with the community development component and opening up the new, I think it was the batting areas, the expansion of the batting for, a certain percentage of time could be used for community organizations and certain aspects like that, is that possible as we move forward? And if we move forward with this resolution, to be able to be listing some of those parameters.
I mean, it's a good request. I think they inherently do that as an organization above and beyond even what we expect. I think they made it clear that this is gonna give them the facilities and the tools to do even more of that.
It'll make it more of a Four Seasons kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Venue.
Yeah,
What you mentioned, a lot of that has already been talked. We've talked about it, and that's coming.
Now, to your point, Lucy, we
We've
do
talked
do
about it.
every 20
Oh, I
years, we
can't.
update the lease agreement with them, and if there's things that we could put in there.
Right, I just think.
At that time might make sense, but I think that this is gonna be a catalyst for them to do even more.
That's the hope.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
In a city where we should have a number of professional baseball players coming out of it in the years to come, so.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, any other comments on that resolution? All right, before we go into an executive session, does anybody have any other comments for public discussion this evening? I'm starting to lose my voice. After about an hour, I lose my voice.
Can everybody hear us? How is the volume level before we go into the public meeting? Are we shouting at you or do
It-
we need to speak louder?
It comes out at a conversational tone, Counselor. We put significant upgrades into that third floor conference center. The center acoustic microphones, the little white balls coming down from the ceiling. The lighting was done. You could dim, those are blackout curtains behind you. We really upgraded that facility during the shutdown.
I don't have no ball.
It's a nice environment. Thank you. Can you see our facial expressions?
Oh, yes, Linda zoomed in, so we can see you quite clearly as well.
You can see us.
You can't see me.
And I'm
though.
way out in center field.
I'm way back here.
We're both back here.
No, you'd be in left field.
Watch it, see, this is why we didn't want to get back together.
There you go.
You see what happens. All right, we're gonna ask everyone who doesn't belong in the executive session to please leave this meeting. We'll stop any recording, and then we should be prepared to start our public meeting. I'd say right around 10:07, 7 at the latest.
I'm gonna excuse myself.
Can you get me a water while you're up?
Sure.
Do you mind?
Can I?
How about a
Step
California
away real
cheesesteak?
quick.
Yeah.
I think that was Nate. You might have put some in.
Yes, there.
In here.
Jeff, you want this? Jeff, you want this?
What is it? I can't.
Peanut butter crackers?
Oh, no, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome to.
No, I'm good. You can throw one here straight. I can catch.
You
Used to
told
be
me
on
to
the
throw
Fighting
it.
Phils.
Linda, so the only thing you want me to read then is the Craig Zine thing? Okay. And
Yeah,
that's
Jim
just a
Schlegel is going
simple,
to be on.
that's just a simple sentence there, right?
You know that one thing I was talking about, Jeff?
What's that?
The one guy had a big job here and retired. He was in charge of collecting monies that were given out.
Well, there was a
No,
lot
wait, no,
of
wait.
shenanigans
And
over
if
the
you
years.
check the